think.
Okay, that's what I did before. Okay, so now we are going to let everyone in. You ready?
I'm ready.
Good morning. Welcome.
Hello.
Good
Thank you
morning.
for joining us.
Good morning.
We're going to continue to let people in as they come, and we will begin in a moment. Happy Friday. It's exciting.
I'm so happy it's Friday.
Mm.
Me too. Me
I
too.
feel like I've had this I don't know like if it's a sinus or like a cough, but it's been like 2 weeks and I'm like, I just want to lay down.
Oh, I hope you feel better.
I've been drinking so much tea and I don't know,
Yeah.
every holistic thing as possible. I don't know, it's so
hmm
obnoxious.
I think I have had like allergies and stuff. I think it's this crazy weather. I don't know. Where I'm in upstate and we just got a ton of snow again, and I'm like, so okay. So looks like let's see, we there's not really a lot of people coming in. So what we're gonna do first is we're going to pop up a poll. If you could just fill this out, letting us know what your role is, what county you're serving, and what agency you work for. This kind of helps us with some of those demographics. We'll leave this up for a few minutes and then we'll get started. We love seeing some of the familiar faces. We love seeing some new faces. So thank you everyone for joining us. We'll talk a little bit about it later, but we have Family Empowerment Day coming up soon. So we hope to see some familiar faces and new faces there. If you're coming, you can let us know in the chat, or if you see us there and we're running around, make sure you come up and say hi. We love being able to meet face to face in person. We're always seeing you on Zoom, so that'll be fun. Um, we'll just wait a couple, maybe another minute or two, so people can finish up the poll that's there. We really appreciate you doing that. If you do have any technical difficulties, feel free to pop it in the chat. You are more than welcome to introduce yourself in the chat also if you'd like to.
We just have two more that need to do the poll. Does anybody not see it?
We have a couple in the chat also.
Oh, one more.
Did I just close that? I just closed that for everyone, didn't I, Christy?
Oh, I can see it.
Okay.
I don't know if they can, but it's
Okay.
14 of 15. We're good.
Okay, so we are going to get started. Let me share my screen. Share content only. Can you see this, Christy?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so welcome. We're going to be talking about collaborative documentation today. One of my favorite things. We've really been, talking a lot more about this. We'll do some introductions for those who don't know us. My name is Ashley Sindoni. I am the Family Workforce Development Coordinator here at Families Together New York. I've been here about a year. I live in upstate New York and I have 4 children. Christy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Christy Ingram. I'm also in upstate. I'm a little bit east of Rochester, and I have 3 kids. They're all grown. My first grandbaby is cooking right now and is due this summer. Trying to think what else. I work with Ashley. So we have the same role in the workforce development, and I'm super glad to see everybody. And I just want to remind everybody the TA calls are a little bit more relaxed. So if you have questions or anything like that, please feel free to like either raise your hand, put it in the chat, or just unmute and ask as we go along. So glad to have you guys here, and hopefully this will help support you.
Okay, so here we go, collaborative documentation. So the first thing we want to ask is if you are currently practicing collaborative documentation. You can raise your hand, you can put it in the chat. Is anyone currently, practicing collaborative documentation? I see yes from Vanessa. So when we talk about collaborative documentation, it could be, well, assessments and treatment plans, but we're also talking about progress notes. So, writing your progress note with a family. So is anyone doing that? See, I see yeses, which is exciting. And then we want to ask, why do you feel it's important to include the family voice in everything we do? It's a smaller group, so if you have an answer for that, you want to come off mute, you're more than welcome to do that. Or you can put it in the chat. Any ideas why it's important to include family voice in everything we do? Okay, so we got some answers coming in the chat. That's exciting. So Stephanie said they are experts on themselves. That's right. Vanessa says so they can be heard. Amy, we want to know we aren't doing anything about them without them. That's right. Tracy says it's family centered. Right. I love that. Family centered, family driven, letting them know that, as Amy said, we're not doing anything about them without them. So everything we do, we're doing with them. So that kind of, we'll get more into this later, but that kind of takes away or minimizes that power dynamic, right? By including them in there. That's great. Anyone else have any other thoughts?
Hi, I'm new to the group. I just happened to see this group
Sure.
even existed about 15 minutes ago.
Oh,
So, hello
yay. Well, we're
everyone.
happy to have
Um,
you.
so I'm assuming, I don't know, but it's collaborative documentation where they're aware of what you're saying in the
Yeah.
documentation.
Yeah, they are aware, but they are also taking part in it.
Right. So I feel, so I'm just going out on a limb that this is going to build a sense of trust with them.
Yeah,
You know, I feel like
yeah,
that's important.
absolutely.
I work
It's a
with
good,
families. I haven't done the collaborative documentation, but I like the idea of this. So I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say.
awesome. We're super excited you're here, Kelly. I'm glad you joined us, and thank you for being brave and coming off and giving us an answer. That's absolutely true. It does create, that trust. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay.
Ashley,
Oh, sure thing. Sorry. Go ahead.
hi. I just wanted to say it's really important because parents need to make sure that they understand what's going on with their children, how
Mm-hmm.
that's going to affect the family,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can have clear communication about what is happening,
Mm-hmm.
understand services, recommendations, um, and then give their input because, as someone said in the chat, they are the experts on their lives.
Absolutely.
And it has to be a partnership or it's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you use the word partnership, right? Um, we can just see so much more success when we're a partner and again that power dynamic it just minimizes that power dynamic it creates a partnership and the family peer advocate role is a little bit different in that we can have that partnership a lot of times providers come in, with I don't want to get too far ahead, but with, a service plan, and they tell the family what to do, where we are able to create that partnership and bring the family in, give them a seat at the table. So thank you for using that word, Hope. It's super powerful. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Yep, I just wanted to add
Sure.
that I think it builds like self-efficacy and empowers families to, better trust their own,
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah. Great answer. Exactly. That self-efficacy, we're trying to, give them the empowerment and belief that they know how to do it, how to advocate for themselves. And, sometimes we go in and families are so overwhelmed, or, that they don't have that self-efficacy. So that's great. Okay. So we'll move on. So we want to just stop and take a note here. We are going to be very broad in this. In as far as what collaborative documentation is, um as family care advocates, but we want to note that your agency may have its own policies and expectations about documentation. So make sure you discuss your agency policies with your supervisor. If you have like a handbook, kind of going over it there. Like I said, we're going over the basics, but there might be additional things, or expectations that your agency expects out of you, I guess. We have family care advocates all over New York State in different agencies. So always check with your supervisor, the handbook, on your own policies and procedures. So we just wanted to mention that.
Also of note is that we're coming from an OMH programic lens. So if you're in a program that is outside of OMH, great, welcome. But just so that that's sort of where our perspective is coming from.
Exactly. Thank you, Kristen. So the training objectives, what we really want to send home today is identifying key components of quality documentation. So what does that look like? We're going to differentiate between goals, objectives, and interventions on a treatment plan. We will describe strategies for including the family in all aspects of documentation. And we want people to understand how to use a strength-based approach when completing documentation. So we'll start out with what is collaborative documentation. So a process in which the FPA, Family Peer Advocate, partners with the caregiver during documentation. So collaborative documentation, when we talk about it, it's including the caregiver in your documentation, essentially. This could include assessments, treatment plans, progress notes. We've heard from, a couple of you, it gives the caregiver a voice as to what is being documented about them, their youth, their progress, and what they hope to accomplish. So essentially, writing progress notes with the family, writing treatment plans with the family, involving them as much as possible in those assessments, asking questions, kind of thing. We're going to talk mostly about the caregiver here when we talk about the collaborative documentation. But, if the youth is age appropriate and they're capable of being included in that conversation, that is also something you can do as well. It's just pulling that youth in. But just a reminder, we work with the caregiver for the benefit of the youth. So essentially we'll be talking about the caregiver, but, it could include the youth as well. So we'll pause for a moment, and we want to ask you, and again, you can come off mute, you can raise your hand, you can put it in the chat. So what are some of the benefits of collaborative documentation for the provider and for the family? Oh, Margaret, is your hand raised?
I was just gonna say it you're able to document, write down families' goals more accurately, and then maybe, track that progress of, you know,
Yeah,
from
exactly. I see Ishan says that everyone is on the same page. That's a great one. Making sure we're understanding what the family is saying, right? Hope said it's a record that can document progress. I see allowing the family to be heard and also knowing what the family wants to work towards. And then we can clarify what they've expressed and capture it accurately. It's in real time. Yes, that's a good one I want to talk about here in a minute. So one of the things I had thought about when we talk about collaborative documentation. This is gonna be a tongue twister for me today. Is that, a lot of times as family care advocates, we see, 3, 4, maybe 5 families in one day. And, a lot of times we spend in our car and you are either trying to remember, what the visit is, or you're taking notes, right? And so if you're not using a notepad and you're trying to remember, and you've seen like 4 families that day, and at the end of your last visit, it's the end of your work day, so you might do your progress notes the next day, and you have to remember everything that happened. I know I can't remember what I did this morning, so like I'm going to miss something. So just trying to remember all that, or if you have a notebook in hand and you're writing what the caregiver says. I know I get super anxious about that. Caregivers can wonder, like, what are they writing? Or it almost creates that power dynamic where you have power over the family. And that's, something we don't want to do. We want it to be family driven. We want the family to be our partners. We heard. So just writing handwritten notes, and then if we are writing notes during the visit, we are going back and then we have to type that all up. It's almost like doing double the work as far as the family prayer advocate goes. So we can take some of that away when we use some of our time to do the notes with the caregiver. And like people have said in the chat, caregivers, their voice goes into it. They can say what they want to go in the note. They can say how they felt about the visit, if something was helpful, if something wasn't helpful, what they want to work on next time. And so their voice really goes into that progress note. Any other thoughts, questions, comments on that? All right. Okay. So collaborative documentation, it should include assessments. So when we do assessments with the caregiver or the youth, we to make it collaborative, we can ask open-ended questions. We can rephrase what they said to make sure we fully understand, or we can ask follow-up questions. Are there certain assessments that you all are using right now? Does anyone want to share what assessments they might be using?
I do fans assessments.
Sure. That's one we're familiar with. Is anyone doing anything other than fans? Yeah, so if you're familiar with fans, it can be more like a conversation. We don't have to look at just the assessment and ask what just the questions, or that are on there. We can ask those follow-up questions to really make sure that when we're doing assessments, the caregiver's voice is in there. And repeating or rephrasing what they said. So this is what I heard you say, to make sure that we get that right. So family treatment plans, they should always be written with the caregiver. So sometimes it might just feel easier just to write the goals and objectives yourself. The caregiver might not be sure of what they want to work on. They might be overwhelmed, so the caregiver most of the time will be a little bit more receptive when the goals and objectives are things that they want to work on. We shouldn't be bringing a best practice as we shouldn't be bringing a family treatment plan to a family and asking them to approve it. They should be involved in that at all times. And then as far as progress notes, they can be written, within the last 5-10 minutes of your visit. And you don't have to write the note in its entirety, right? So, because you know how long it takes to write a progress note. We don't have to write that in its entirety. We can do bullet points and really hit those high points that the family wants to include. Maybe what they covered today, like I said before, what's important to them, what worked during the visit, maybe something didn't work during the visit, what they want to work on in the future, how that visit felt to them. We can bullet point those items and use that in our notes. So you don't have to sit and write it entirety. The family can see your computer, they can see what you're writing. They can, ask you to change things or reword things. And when we do that, it can improve on partnering. We create that partnership. I know a couple of you have said that. It can help with focus. The family can see the benefit of what you're doing. So when they're seeing those notes and they're seeing that, okay, this is what we did, and now it's going to snow, it can really help them, see the benefit of it. It can help with engagement. When a family feels like they have a seat at the table, it can help them, be more engaged. And then success. If the family is saying what they want to work on and they have a part in that, it can really help increase the chance for success. So I'm sure you've heard this before. If it is not documented, it didn't happen. So you can think of documentation like your evidence of the work you've done, as well as the work the caregiver has done, right? So we document the service provided. The work the family peer advocates do with families is transformative. It's important that it is recognized through quality documentation. So FPAs work hard. We work hard to give the caregiver a voice, the youth a voice. The work we do is life-changing. Will not always be in the caregiver's life. The work we do with them is preparing them to be an advocate and use their voice and feel empowered without us, right? And if even further than that, it's important that the youth learns to advocate for themselves. So, we're teaching the caregiver, maybe the caregiver is helping to empower the youth. And someday, like I said, we're not going to be there. So it really, it gives them that power to advocate and use their voice without us. And then shows the service provided is eligible for reimbursement. Accurate and specific documentation is critical to ensure the FPAs can bill for the services they provide. So there's certain things that need to be in our progress notes to be eligible for reimbursement, and we will go over that in a later slide. But being reimbursed for the work that we're doing, the family is doing, is kind of what keeps the program we're in going, right? Making sure that reimbursement comes in. So it allows us to continue to do the work. It allows us to help caregivers and youth. Any questions so far? Okay. So documentation equals evidence. So engagement, progress notes allow the family's engagement to be tracked. um, it's easy for us to say like, oh, our family isn't very engaged. They're not answering my calls. They're not meeting with me. But when we allow the family to be involved more with the documentation, we can get some background information. We can see, what's going on. If the family isn't engaged during this time, we can kind of see, what's going on in the background. Maybe, they're overwhelmed with, so many appointments right now that it's hard for them to be engaged. Maybe something else is going on in their lives that we don't really know about. But when we invite them into that conversation, we can find some of that stuff out. And, you know, as family prayer advocates, we have lived experience, and I'm sure many of you will understand that, sometimes when you're in the thick of it, that lived experience, it's not always easy to see the progress that you're making. And it's the same for the families. Progress, it allows the family's progress to be highlighted. We can show the family their strengths, their success, using that as evidence. It's not always to see one small step, but those, 10 small steps equal one big step. And so when, you've been working with the family 3 months and they don't really think they've seen progress, you can go back and say, well, look at where we started and look at where you are now. And as far as barriers, we want to identify the barriers the family is facing. Documentation can show patterns that may otherwise go unnoticed. So, we're in families' homes. You might have a great relationship with them. Maybe you're working on the relationship and trust, but there might be things, like I said, going on in the background that we're not familiar with. If there are barriers there, collaborative documentation can help us identify those. Maybe, maybe the caregiver is working less hours. And so now it's harder for them to put food on the table. If there's something, like that going on in the background, it's going to be more difficult to work on the goals that you have. If there's something going on in the background, if their necessities aren't being met, we can identify those barriers. And we can support the family to work through them also. Just checking the comments every so often. Nice. So some of the barriers, is it might feel awkward to have the computer out, right? So if you're sitting there with your computer out, you're typing, that might feel awkward to a family. The solution to that is just waiting till the end of the meeting to bring out the documentation tool. So even if you're, whether it's your computer or your handwriting notes, you can wait till, like I said, the last 5 or 10 minutes to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a computer. If you have notes, you can like kind of sit with the family and write the note together on, notebook, paper, or whatever, where they can see it. Or, if you have a computer that you're doing it on, you can turn it and let them see it. But you don't necessarily have to have it out the whole time. It can wait till the end of the visit. A barrier might be, as an FPA, you can't focus on writing and the caregiver. So again, we want to work with the caregiver. So you're both writing the documentation. So you can write something and say, hey, how does that sound to you? Turning the computer towards them or turning the note towards them. Or, we talked a little bit already about open-ended questions and rephrasing. Okay, so this is what I have written down here. What I hear you saying is this, and then they can say, yeah, that's right, or well, I really meant this. So really asking those open-ended questions, rephrasing things so that you're both writing that note together. Sometimes it might feel as though it makes the visit less family focused. We can be open about asking for their input. How do you feel about doing this? At first, caregivers might be a little bit unsure because how many service providers ask us or ask families, caregivers, youth to write notes with them? It might be awkward at first. It might be something that at first the caregiver doesn't participate in as much, but as you make it more of a routine and something they get used to and asking them about input, they may be more open to it. So, just be aware of that in the beginning, it's different. It might be different. It might be something they're not used to. So just give it time and consistency. A barrier may be that you worry that the family will feel judged. Um, we can explain to them that it is to include their voice instead of our own voice. A lot of times that'll go far with a family is, we want to make sure that we're including your voice in this, that you have a seat at the table, that you're being heard. And I'm sure most of you can relate. As caregivers, you don't always feel heard, right? So I think that's just a very strength-based way to put it. Just letting them know that somebody's actually listening, somebody cares about what they have to say, and that it's important. And we might worry about not having the space to document, either a table or a firm surface. So you can, with that, you can bring a work bag from home. Obviously, depending on each family's home where you're meeting, you'll have to, I guess, work that around the family. If you're working in public or if you're going into the home, but there's not a smooth surface, maybe for that family, you would bring like a pen and paper and do the note like that. So you really want to make it so each family has, you have your own way of doing it in each family's home. So, and keeping a work bag or, a folder or even hard service. Sometimes they have like the lap desks and stuff, which might not always be convenient, but you can judge it on each family's home and, what works in that home or even if you're meeting in public. So. So we capture the family voice in progress notes when the family is part of the documentation process. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Just the importance of capturing the family voice? Or have you had any families maybe who have expressed how they felt about being part of, the documentation process?
Hey, Ashley, I had a question.
Sure.
I think that's important. I'm noticing and I was just thinking about this when we were talking, I put family voice in progress notes. I'm just noticing like when I go to a doctor's appointment, the doctor will ask if they can, record you, so that they could get the notes or whatever, So I think
Yeah.
any way that you can
Hmm.
include the family's voice and letting them know what
Hmm.
is your understanding of this meeting? This is my understanding.
Hmm.
This is what this is how I'm capturing it. What do you feel about that? It's all about how you frame it so that um, it is, it's in alignment with what the family is saying and what you're
Hmm.
experiencing. Those are the best notes to get.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So then, we're going to talk a little bit about the golden thread. Has anyone heard of the golden thread? Does anyone use it? You can just pop your hand up if you've heard of the golden thread before. Yeah. Okay. I see some yeses. I see some thumbs up, some handshakes. Okay. So what is the golden thread? So the golden thread is what ties everything together. So we first look at assessments. The assessments identify the family's needs and it assists in writing the treatment plan, right? So we do the assessment with the family, we include them, we, ask them to clarify, we have a conversation with them, making sure that we have their full voice in the assessment. So then we work with the family, do the treatment plan, right? So the golden thread leads us to the treatment plan. We're gonna look back when we're doing the treatment plan, we're gonna look back at the assessments. We're gonna identify the areas of the family or the caregiver, the youth, their strengths. We're going to identify the goals that the family created. What did they say they want to work on? What did they say they're strong at? I want to mention here, we might not always agree with the family. We might see areas where, oh, okay, so that I think they really need to work on this, but we really want to make sure that we are being family driven, and we don't necessarily have to agree on what what we feel the family should work on. They are the ones who should be identifying that, and we'll use those assessments to help. So that ties those two things together. Then the progress notes, the assessments, the treatment plan, they are all linked to the progress note, right? So the progress notes track success, they track barriers, they give the who, the what, the when, and the where. So we know what goals we're working on, we know the objectives we're working on. That should be tied in the progress notes. So by reading those progress notes, we should be able to see what you did for objective 1, objective 2, and how that ties to the goal. That should all tie to the discharge plan. So that shows readiness for ending service, and it keeps discharge in the conversation. So that should, be a plan. Discharge should be a plan. So when we're looking at the progress notes, we said that that's evidence. We can look back at where they've come, where they are now, and that will provide evidence for discharge. So the golden thread essentially ties all these things together. Oops, sorry about that. It ties all these things together. So if I were to look at if I were to look at a family's progress notes, I should be able to look and identify the goals. I should be able to use those, understand that the goals came from the assessments. Does that make sense to anyone? Does anyone have any questions about this? So Christy says the entire file should read like a book from start to finish. Exactly. The progress notes from one to the other, you should be able to understand what's going on. And it all should tie together with a nice little bow. Okay, and at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Christy.
Okay. So we're gonna just take a little bit of time and see, just make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what a treatment plan is and what it has within it, and how we can best support the family voice in there. So the treatment plan has a goal, and the goal is about the youth, and it's a big picture. It is not measurable. So that's one of the things to keep in mind, is that you want it to be broad enough that you have some objectives underneath that you can work on, without always having to create a new goal. And then the objective is about the caregiver. So the objective is the action step that the caregiver is going to take towards achieving the goal. And then the intervention is about the service provider. So this is about you and what interventions you're going to use to support the caregiver in taking each step towards their goal. I'm good. So assessments. We want to make sure that we're using the family's voice and language. We don't want to over assess. So you can advocate and collaborate with other providers. If a family says, oh, I already did this with so and so, go back, talk to your supervisor, see if you can collaborate with that provider so that you don't have to do the assessment again, especially if it was just recently done. A lot of times we'll see this like when a family's opening and they're doing the same documentation, sort of an assessments with numerous people, and it's exhausting, right? And it also makes them feel like there's no cohesiveness amongst their team. So, advocating that you can use recently done assessments instead of redoing them. Um, when you're doing assessments, you want to make the family comfortable and meet them where they are. The word assessments, right, is really scary. And probably, unfortunately, their experience probably hasn't been great, or they've had at least, a few bad experiences. So when you're assessing, you never want to complete an assessment without the family knowing and agreeing. And then you want to share with them that you're going to put what their answers are in it. And if you are putting if the assessment is appropriate to put your thoughts into or what you see, that you will discuss that with them openly. And then always remember, sometimes when we do assessments, right, we're opening a family and it's like, okay, I want to get this done at this visit because, I have 3 visits before it's due. Make sure to take pauses and let the family really think. Some of the questions that an assessment asks are difficult and might take them a minute to fully think of the answer. But I also want to say that assessments can be a really great tool when you're first engaging with a family to show, right, that you are going to go at their pace, meet them where they're at, and be accurate in your documentation. So it can go a far way to start building that engagement. And it can help ask questions that maybe would be awkward, but are important to know at the start of the service. So Amy Scott said, we should remember to clarify when we're first starting with them how frequent the assessments are meant to be done. I've had families with previous FBAs who didn't tell them that we do a fans every 90 days, so they were caught off guard. Absolutely. Yeah. Be as transparent as possible. And if you forget and they're like, what do you mean I have to do it again? You can say, I am so sorry. I didn't realize this. We're going to be doing this, every 90 days, and I'm sorry I forgot. FANS is for Family Assessment of Needs and Strengths. Any questions or comments or anything like that? Okay. Treatment plans, everybody's favorite topic. So as we've said a few times, treatment plans should be completed collaboratively with the youth, caregiver, and any other individual requested. We need to use assessments to inform the treatment plan. With that said, when we're doing a treatment plan, if a family's score contradicts what they're sharing with you or what they want put into the treatment plan, you can absolutely note that. So using the fans as an example, I've had this happen where maybe a family scored 0 or no need on something. And then when we're completing the treatment plan, they say, oh, I want this. So let's say it's listening, like the ability to hear negative feedback. They said that they didn't need support on that on the assessment. But when you're doing the treatment plan, they restate and say that they do need support. You're just going to roll with it, right? And then on your treatment plan, you can say, despite scoring a 0 on the FANS assessment, the family identifies that they have this need. So you don't have to hold them strictly to what their answers were in an assessment. It might vary day by day. And if you're just starting working with a family, they might not have felt comfortable at that moment to share that or not thought of it in that way. We're going to support the family in creating goals, objectives, and interventions that meet their needs. So, first of all, we want to make sure that we're explaining, right, what each of those are. We're going to sort of go through them, so that they know, right, what that looks like and what we're sort of looking for from them. And a family should never be asked to approve a treatment plan that they didn't help create. And you can empower them to do this with other providers as well. Somebody comes in and says, hey, sign this. You can empower them to say, let's read it together and see if I need to make any changes first. So, all right, I'm good. All right. So in PEP, we use the ladder. In my real life, I use cake. So when I am talking about a treatment plan, I use cake. So I think of like the whole cake, right, is the goal. It's the big thing that we want to have be eaten. So it's very broad. You can't eat a whole cake at once. You have to cut it into pieces. And so when you're thinking of the goal, right, you want it to be that big cake. The objectives are the pieces of cake a family is going to take and eat in order to achieve the goal. So there's, if it's a big cake, there's going to be a lot of pieces. And so you want to take each piece individually and support the family in achieving that. We don't want to try to just eat the whole cake because that doesn't work for anybody. And then your interventions are you supporting the family and eating their piece of cake. So, how are you going to help them take little bites or steps towards achieving that objective to achieve the goals overall? So, does anybody have any questions about that? I'm surprised. Nothing? All right. You either hate my cake or you really like it. All right. Goals. So the assessment, again, is used to inform the goals. The goals are about the child or youth. The goals are that big picture, that cake, and the goals need to be connected to the discharge plan. So when you're starting with a family, we always say you should start about discharge on day one. You want to say, what is going to be some of the signs that are going to show you that you're ready to discharge, that you have achieved what you needed to achieve with the service, and you're ready to be independent. You're going to take those answers and you're going to use them to create your treatment plan. So, and then remember that they're broad. So if a child isn't going to school, your goal isn't going to be Johnny will attend school every day. Your goal is going to be Johnny will attend school or Johnny will engage appropriately with school, something broad so that you can have some steps under that and make it more achievable, more realistic. Any questions about that? All right. So questions are powerful and can drive thoughts and conversation. So I'd like to see if you guys have any questions that you might ask to help create goals with families or objectives, if that's helpful. You can unmute, you can raise your hand, you can put it in the chat. So Vanessa, you're saying that you need help with what questions you could ask?
Yes, trying to get them to talk at all is important, and I'm not getting like anybody to really engage with me. Like some people, one client in particular, I've called like 7 times since the beginning of February, and they still haven't like contacted me. And every time my boss is like, "Have you made contact?" And I'm like, "I'm trying," and then it's just like another one has little ones that are just upset every time I call, which I feel bad. So my conversations are like 3 minutes long. So any sort of other stuff, if I can finally start getting some people to talk, I know I'll probably be like, oh my God, yeah, you're actually talking to me. and then
Yes.
I'll probably just forget everything. So any sort of like questions to start the ball rolling would be helpful.
Yes. So one thing, especially, so it sounds like you're not even getting in the door, which is like one of the biggest barriers, right? Because you can't show them what the service is or what working with a peer is like if you can't meet them and actually, have that initial conversation.
Exactly. And
So,
it's hard too because here in the clinic, I'll see that they're coming in with their families, but I can't see them because I can't do a double provider for the day. So that makes it hard too because I'll maybe see somebody and say hi to them and introduce myself, and they're on my list, and it's like they're already here, but I can't see them.
so I would encourage you to talk to your supervisor, and see if there's any flexibility with that. I mean, if they're engaged well and have a positive relationship, very key, with another provider, and you can come in even for like the last 15 minutes and talk to them and sort of show them and discuss with them what the service is, it can go a long way to them actually answering the phone or scheduling. And ideally, during that time, they would be willing to schedule with you. So I would really encourage you to see if you can use that opportunity. And again, you don't have to be there for the whole visit. Oh, you've tried that? Yeah. The other thing, are you allowed to text?
I am allowed to text, but still, I wouldn't be able to put it in anything because if they have a meet with the provider, then I can't put anything in, and I don't want to say, oh, I talked to them on Thursday and put it in for Friday, so it's not double billed.
Right. So, and you wouldn't bill for a text. But what it can do, what even once weekly text and just really neutral, like, hey, just wanted to say I hope that your week went well. And if you need anything, I'm here. I'm going to
Okay.
give you a call on Wednesday at 3. Hopefully we can schedule. And so you're not like doing it every day, but you're just
Mhm.
sending that text to show them that that you are open, that you're here, and hopefully they'll feel supported and be more willing to engage. Um,
Consistency. Yeah.
so for questions on helping families create their goals, we have what does your end game look like, which is awesome. Asking the family what their immediate need is, which is great. Like, what do you need to prioritize? Especially if it's those basic needs. Can you share with me one thing? Amy Scott said, can you share with me one thing that you feel would make your daily life easier when it comes to the needs of your child? Absolutely. Tiffany said, what will success look to you? What things are holding you back? I love that. Stephanie said, offer yourself as a help in whatever area. Everybody needs something, just to open it up and start simple and try to expand. And I think, Vanessa, that might be for you. If you do get to contact with them, keep it really general, and easy to build that engagement. And then Kelly said, I often ask what's weighing on them the most right now and go from there. Or how can I help you today? I love that. All right, next one. Objectives. So your goal is going to inform your objective, because it's literally, your objective is literally a piece of cake of your goal. So the objectives are about the caregiver, and their objectives are a step or a piece towards that goal. And objectives need to be SMART. And we'll look at SMART after that. Does anybody have any questions about that? So, has everybody heard of SMART objectives? Sometimes people say SMART goals, but it frustrates me because you don't use SMART for goals. Um, so SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And if when you're writing your treatment plans, you're thinking and looking for each of those, you will know that it's a objective that is billable for OMH. And you want to make sure, right, that it's attainable. So if you are, let's say you're writing an objective about school and one of the objectives is, you know, that the caregiver is going to wake up to me, or support to me in getting to school every day, 5 days a week. The caregiver, like, to pause and say to the caregiver, do you think that that's realistic? We want them to be able to succeed. So maybe we need to start with 2 days a week or 3 days a week and build up to that. It doesn't have to be everything. We can move, right? We can succeed in an objective of 2 days a week, and we can bump it to maybe 4 days a week and then succeed at that and then work our way to 5. We want families to be able to keep moving forward and feeling success and gaining momentum, and most importantly, gaining hope. Interventions. So interventions are formed by the objective, and they are written about you, the FPA. So interventions describe the method or intervention the FPA will use. Interventions need to identify the type of service. So if you are a CFTSS, FPSS, all the letters in the soup, you're going to write that down. And oh, sorry, I lost my place. And then one important thing for OMH is that you have to identify the frequency and duration of service in your intervention. So this FPA will meet with the caregiver once a week for 6 months. Once a week for an hour for 6 months. Welcome, Donna. Any questions about that? I feel like a lot of times we talk about goals and objectives, and interventions sort of get left to the side.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of families that aren't consistent, that don't even like to schedule their next visit at the end of our visit. They just say, "Well, I'll reach out to you when I'm ready for the next visit." So how would we put that into a goal? It would just look like they were failing, like, or sometimes sometimes I don't even have parents that meet with me monthly, like it's a every 6 weeks or so. So I wouldn't want,
Wow.
like, how would you do? Yeah, well, in Youth Act, they're with us such long term anyways that the parents, yeah, some of them don't meet with me at all, some are weekly, but there are some that are so barely, they just vary so much and it's never consistent that how would I do that on a goal to make it look like they weren't failing?
So for the intervention, I think I would talk to, like, your team lead or your supervisor, and see if you can say, like, this writer will meet with the family once a month. And then you're just at least checking in and writing a progress note once a month to say that you checked in with the family. They said that they didn't want to meet with you. Um, with that said, and Amy Scott says in the comments, I have a family who said that they wanted to meet biweekly, but they cancel or reschedule often. So that's something that you do want noted, right, in their progress notes. And when you're reviewing the treatment plan, you might sit down with these families and they feel super frustrated because they didn't make the movement that they wanted to see. And you can say, right, you can have the very frank conversation. We were supposed to meet weekly. We've only met once monthly for the last 6 months. Do you think that maybe it would be helpful if we meet bi-weekly so that we can do a little bit more work towards this? So I think that it can be, it needs to be honest. You need to be making that effort and documenting it in a progress note. But you can also have that conversation with the families, like, um, this is what you identify. Do we need to adjust it? Do we need to change it because we're not meeting that often? For being in Youth Act and sort of maybe being on call, I would talk to the team lead about possibly going under a different objective, as another provider that can support that objective, if that makes sense. So, like, if a case manager has an objective, maybe you can go under that as an intervention, so that there's two providers working on one objective.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I love doing this stuff. Email me anytime.
Also, I just want to kind of say that it doesn't hurt sometimes to find out what the barriers are behind them not being able to meet. Like, what is the reason? You know, if you can have that conversation, if they are meeting with, five other service providers, or they just feel overwhelmed with time, maybe like Christy said, if there's a time where you could pop in with another service provider, or at the end of their visit, that might work too. But just sometimes finding out what those barriers are kind of helps to um maybe get them to meet a little bit more, if we can identify and work on some of those barriers that are keeping them from meeting. I don't know if that makes sense.
All right. Excuse me. Intervention tips. So sometimes it can be the hardest to write interventions. At least it was for me. It was like, what am I going to do and how do I put it down on paper? Because a lot of times we just go in and do that support, right? Like we're not thinking about it in a way that is easily documented in a treatment plan. So you want to think about how you're going to support the family to meet that objective. And think about it like logistically, like, okay, she needs to wake up Tommy at school. Like, what do I foresee us working on and talking about in order for me to support her in doing that successfully? Um, you can ask the family, how do you feel like I could best support you in meeting this objective? Hopefully they, have some ideas, or you can start to brainstorm back and forth together to find what that or intervention needs to be. Make your interventions concise and easily understood. You want to have your interventions be broad enough that so you don't want to say like, I will talk to this, FPA will talk to the care provider or to the caregiver about setting the alarm, right? That's like really minuscule, really specific. You want to say the caregiver will problem solve or brainstorm for solutions to meet this objective. That way you can brainstorm and problem solve in a couple different areas, all that relate back to that objective. Does that make sense? You want to include how you will meet one-on-one and or in group settings. And if you meet in the home and community, you want to include that as well. So that can look like, provider will meet with family one-on-one and or in a group session, a group setting, both in the home and community. If it's only one, if you always are going to see them in their home, that's what you write. If it's always going to be one-on-one in their home, then you just say this provider will, or this FPA or whatever you call yourself, will meet with the family one-on-one in the home. And then you're going to put that duration. And then I already said this, so don't be too specific. So this example is the FPA will plan with the family for future meetings instead of the FPA will plan with the family about CSE meetings. That way, when you need to go and support the family and talking to the counselor, it's going to still fall within your objective and you don't like have to change your treatment plan in order to go do that meeting. Any questions on that? You guys are so quiet. It's Friday though, and it's murky at least here. All righty. Oh, thank you. All right, back to Ashley.
So progress notes. We talked about there needs to be certain things in the progress note so that we can be reimbursed for them. And just to make it a quality progress note. So date, time, length of visit, and type of contact. Did you meet them on Zoom? Was it a telephone call? Was it in person? Your agency will have, their own protocol as to where you would put these things in the note, but they do need to be included. The location of contact, again, was it in their home? Was it Dunkin' Donuts? The service you provided. the goal and objective that you worked on from the treatment plan, and what you did with that family during the day. So how you supported them in reaching their objective. This is, and then as far as the goal and objective goes, this is where we can include the family. What did you get the most out of today? What, and also for their next visit, what do you want to work on next time? That kind of thing. How the family responded to the interventions. Were there success or barriers in meeting objectives? So maybe you did something with the family and it was not successful. They, didn't get much out of it. Or maybe you modeled, calling a service provider or the school with them, and that was super helpful for them. We want to put how they responded. Bringing the family into that conversation is going to be helpful to see what they felt worked for them, what they felt maybe didn't work for them. Then the next steps for both the provider and the family. What did you want the family to do before your next visit? Is there anything the provider is going to be doing before the next visit? We want to be sure to include the date and the time of, the date, the time, and the place of the next visit. We want to make sure the date is fully written out, month, day, and year, the time. Any questions about what goes into a note? Just kind of a reiterate.
Ashley?
Sure, go ahead.
Ash, it's Amy. Just a quick question. Would you make recommendation when you make a recommendation for like a service or something like that, like additional, would you put that in your progress note?
Yeah, I would. Exactly. Yep. So if you referred them anywhere or that kind of thing, yeah, that's a good thing to put into the note. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you.
So kind of just reiterating some of the information that we've already given you. You can create time at the end of your visit to complete the progress note. You can use this to remind everyone what the goals and objectives are and connect it to the visit. So this is, the objectives that we want to be working on. And, we just want to remember that the treatment plan is a living document. So you can always, if there's something else that comes up, we can always change, alter, create new objectives, that kind of thing. Again, let the caregiver see what you're writing. Have them participate in what's being written, what they want to put into the notes. And then we really want to find out what was helpful for the family. Not everything works for every family. So just finding out what's helpful for them, what they feel they need support with, what their strengths are, if something worked, if it didn't work. And then invite them to create a plan with you for the next visit. So this is where we're at today. What do you want to plan on for next time? Is there anything that you need support in? Is there anything coming up? Maybe they have an IEP meeting coming up and they want help kind of creating a plan for that next time. So really inviting them to what is going to happen next. Any questions on this? Comments, thoughts? So check the chat really quick. So some of the benefits, we've talked about this a little bit, but it maintains professional boundaries by, doing the notes with the person, with the individual, the caregiver. It kind of creates that professional boundary. We oftentimes we work closely with the caregivers and the youth. Those professional boundaries can sometimes, it can be, we can come across, as friends sometimes. And so we really want to make sure we're maintaining those professional boundaries. And this helps with that. It puts focus on the goals and objectives. The caregiver can see what we're working on, what we need to be working on, where we've been. And I think somebody else said it, real time. It loves the caregiver to see progress in real time. And just a reminder, we can, go back and see where they've been, use those progress notes as evidence. And it gives the caregiver control and takes away that power dynamic. It lets them know that they have a seat at the table, that, you know, somebody's actually listening to them. Okay, so we're going to kind of look at what the caregiver voice may look like compared to the FPA voice. So if an FPA were to write something, maybe you notice the caregiver was overwhelmed on this day. So we write that caregiver was overwhelmed on this day. If we are doing collaborative progress notes, the caregiver might say they are having difficulty manage multiple service related appointments. It gives a little bit of depth as to why you're seeing that overwhelm. And it puts it in the caregiver's perspective. The caregiver nodded off during the visit. That's just cut and dry. People can't, if somebody read that, they can assume multiple things. Maybe, you know, if I'm a supervisor or, you know, an auditor reading this and I'm like, or anybody else reading this really, and they nodded off during the visit, it allows me to assume, you know, I can assume why. Maybe they don't care about this. Maybe they don't need the service, right? That allows for us to assume. But when we bring the caregiver in, and let them help you write the note, they can say, I'm exhausted today. Mandy would not turn off her TV and go to sleep last night. That doesn't leave any room for assumptions. You know, we can see what's going on with the caregiver. Maybe the FPA writes, the caregiver was feeling more confident advocating for her son. And in the caregiver's voice, they can say, I was able to call the school and discuss my son's IEP by myself. Again, not knowing what their goals and objectives were, but that's more specific. If that was, you know, a goal or object, you know, if it was an objective, for the caregiver to start making phone calls or, you know, start helping with the IEP. This shows us the evidence. This gives us more detail. And it kind of gives us a deeper dive, and in the caregiver's voice, they can see this shows us the evidence. It shows us their progress. We can go back and show them the small step that they were able to do. It's definitely more specific and strength-based.
Another thing that I just wanted to say really quickly is to remember that like anything that's written here under like the FPA voice would need to be changed. Like I guess the caregiver nodded off during the visit is factual, but the
Yeah.
caregiver was feeling more confident is your opinion. So you want to say the caregiver, you know, stated and then use
Yeah.
the quotes ideally. Or, you know, the caregiver stated feeling more confident so that it's clear that you're getting the information from the caregiver. It's not just like what you're thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with the caregiver stated they were overwhelmed on this day. That's something, you know, that we want to make sure we're not giving our opinion to. Thank you. Thank you, Christy. Any thoughts or questions on this? Oops. Okay. So we are going to kind of, I guess, play a little game. You can come off mute if you want, or Christy, would you mind watching the chat for me?
I sure will.
Okay, so I want you to tell me whose voice you think it is. We'll read the following sentences and you can see if you feel like this came from the FPA by themselves or maybe if the caregiver was involved in this. So the first one, we read, caregiver expressed feeling overwhelmed with many service providers. Is that something the FPA wrote or do you feel the family was involved?
Read it again.
Sorry. The caregiver expressed feeling overwhelmed with many service providers.
I would think it's with the family.
Okay. Anyone else?
Amy says FPA wrote, but family was involved. And Sean said the family. Betty Lou said the family. Tiffany said the FPA.
Okay.
Lasha said the family.
Okay, so let's read the second one. parent express that they are working with this writer, FPA, however you write that, a care manager and a social worker, and it makes her feel like she's not a good mom. So this one could be written with the family, but this one is clearly written with sorry, I'm giving you the answers. This one is clearly written with the family, right? We have more detail in here. That she's working with many service providers. It has her feelings in here. This one's a little more obvious that it's written with the family. Sorry, I was supposed to ask you and I gave the answer. Okay, so the next one, Dad expressed to this writer that he felt confident enough to call the school about his son's IEP.
We've got 3 families in the chat.
Okay.
Family.
It was written. Yep, Betty Lou says with the father.
Okay.
Family.
Yeah, I would say that one was written with the family, right? It's a little more specific.
And clearly says that it was
Yeah.
Dad expressing it.
And then the last one, caregiver expressed they're feeling more confident in their abilities. Any thoughts on that? I see some dad.
Yeah.
Oh,
Lots of
FPA. Oh,
FPA.
FPA. Yeah.
FPA.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's really, I mean, really, it's hard to tell, but you know, a lot of times, when we're getting the information from the family, we get a little bit more information, and that's kind of what we're going for, right? We don't want to leave any room for assumptions. Like Christy said, you want to be careful not to put your opinion. We want to make sure we're saying, you know, they stated or that kind of thing. But when the family is involved in writing it, we get a little bit of background information, you know, like the second one. They're overwhelmed and it explains their feelings. Dad was able to say, you know, he was confident. He felt confident, which is something, you know, if an FPA is writing the note by themselves, we can't say that Dad felt confident unless he actually comes out and says it. But, you know, and here when with Dad helping to write, he's able to state, you know, that he was confident. He was able to call his son's IEP. So it's just kind of showing that, you know,
Observed.
yeah, observed, we could write. So this is just kind of showing that sometimes.
I'm gonna jump in really quick. I wouldn't
Sure.
use observed
Okay.
unless you're being really specific about what that is. So there are instances like if you feel like it's important to document that a parent was angry and they didn't specifically say I'm angry, you could say, you know, parent appeared angry by as evidenced by, or because provider saw, you know, rapid speech, increased volume. But you want to be really careful about observed because probably most of the time it's still your opinion, rather than, you know, like a fact.
Thanks, Christy.
Mhm.
So we will go on. Oh, so before we go on to upcoming events, that brings us to the end. We would just want to kind of ask if anyone is writing progress notes with the family right now. Does anyone want to share what their experience is with that? If there's any tips, if it's working well, that kind of thing. We just want to get some FPAs to share their experience. Is there anyone who's doing it? Maybe nobody is currently doing that, I guess.
There were some at the beginning. I remember. What about is there so for people who do any kind of collaborative documentation,
Sure.
how did you if you did, how did you transition from like writing progress notes in private to writing progress notes more with the family?
So when we were transitioning over to collaborative care, we just pointed out that just like the doctors in the medical offices have to put their notes in while you're there in the office with them, we have to do the same at this time. just kind of making them feel more comfortable with it with a process that they're already doing in other offices.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And do you ever have families that push back?
Some families are really, really good at it. And the longer that you work with a family, the more comfortable they feel with you. So, I just right from the very beginning, as soon as we meet with them the first time and we do the intake, explain to them that process, just like the doctors have to write their electronic records, we have to put ours into. We're also having them sign like, their electronic records release and stuff at that time. So it just kind of goes right in the process of explaining all of that, right, with the
Awesome.
paperwork and stuff.
Thank you. Um, Amy, Scott, it seems like you said that you do collaborative documentation. Do you have anything that like works or that helps get a family on board?
So she has a comment in the chat. She mentioned I have many families who have expressed that it seems awkward and they feel like it's a physical barrier. However, I've always written bullet notes on paper and then tying them together at the end. Not all of them are
Perfect.
receptive, but I implemented it with most. And I think that's a good point to bring up too. Um, Okay, so the physical barrier is when I have the computer open. Absolutely. Okay. So having that and no the pen and paper. So I want to say like we want to do collaborative documentation. We want the family involved, right? But like Amy had said, like there might be it should never feel clinical, right? We shouldn't force that on a family if a family's not receptive to that. Amy brought up a good point, just doing bullet points. We can still just ask them, like if we don't have to have our computer open and type in a note, we could ask them, how did this visit go? And then bullet point on a piece of paper what they said and how they felt. We could still get their answers and still make it collaborative without making it feel clinical or making it seem like we're forcing the family to do it. Christy, did you have something? I thought you were going to talk.
No,
Oh, okay.
no,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So it's a good
I
point.
don't
Thanks. Mhm.
I don't open up my laptop until the end of the visit. Like you
Mhm.
said, when you're getting
Yeah.
ready to put that note in,
Mhm.
that keeps it more of a one-on-one
Yeah.
conversation of,
Yeah,
hey, how are
exactly.
things going? That what
Mhm.
this is what we had discussed we were going to work on today. And then while I'm typing in the note, I'm reiterating what we had discussed. So I'm saying it as I'm typing it. And then I just show it to them. They review it, read it over, agree, disagree, have me change whatever they want. And then, we close the visit and end.
I love that.
Yeah.
Um, and I also feel like, right, when we come into a family's home, and I'm going to be very transparent, when I was doing direct care, I struggled so much with collaborative documentation. It was something my supervisor constantly was like, try it. And I was like, it's weird. But I was able to be successful with it in some cases. And we're teaching the family a skill as well,
Mhm.
right? They're seeing that electronic progress note. They're seeing all the information in there. It just sort of demystifies it. They know when their care manager comes from the same agency, they sort of know what it looks like that their progress note's going to entail. Um, and making sure that you're asking questions, sort of to Wendy's point, like, did I get everything? Is there anything that you feel like I should change? And I think once you sort of open up that dynamic, that you're not just like reiterating, but you're actually asking for feedback back, hopefully they'll be more receptive to it. But they're learning a skill that can, sort of demystify and help them to feel empowered and more on the same level as other providers too. Yeah, sometimes the families, yeah. And I had families that just were not into it. And like Ashley said, um,
Yeah, just keeping it
that
very
was their
family
choice.
driven.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Any final thoughts on this before we share some of our upcoming events?
Yeah,
Amy
I
said
just
she
want to
was.
say,
Mhm.
oh,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, go. We're going to do the same thing.
Oh,
Amy's
yeah.
comment, that it helps the family see strengths. I think that that's awesome. It creates that moment in the meeting where, it just gives you that moment where you can say, oh my gosh, like last week, look at what we've talked about. And then this week, you have done it every day. Like that's
Hmm.
amazing. And so it just creates that space at the end to maybe highlight something that you wouldn't have thought to highlight otherwise.
Yeah. So the last question I'm going to pose is for those who said they have never done it. Is anyone, if you have not done collaborative documentation, is anyone interested in trying it? Is anyone willing to try it? Are there any barriers we're worried about? That kind of thing? Vanessa said she would try. All right, we have one taker. Tiffany. Oh yeah, great. Okay, so we have some people willing to try. Awesome. That's super exciting. And we're gonna go over some events we have coming up, but um I'm going to put our email, FPA credential at familiestogethernewyorkstate.org in the chat. You can take that down. If you ever do need support, with any of these things, you can always feel free to reach out to us. Like Christy said, she is a pro at doing those treatment plans and she knows her stuff. So
Like it for some odd reason. I don't know why. I'm broken. Yes, absolutely, Stephanie. And I think that that's like so true for so much of the work that we do is a lot of times you are already doing these interventions and stuff. You're just doing them so naturally that you're not
Mhm.
thinking of them in that
Yeah.
way. But yeah, like if you do a treatment plan with the family, you're doing collaborative documentation.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go over some upcoming events. On March 24th from 12 to 1:30, we have supporting youth and family through challenging social climates. That's with our youth peer advocate Jay, and it's with Christy. It's for both youth peer and family peer, right, Christy? Okay, then on March 30th, we have Family Empowerment Day in Albany. If you haven't signed up to go, we would love to see you there. We do have buses across the state that are free for you to take. And that's on our website, so you can sign up for a bus. It's a super fun time. We really look forward to seeing you there, so we hope you can come. On March 31st, from 1 to 2:30, I will be doing a webinar working with families involved with child welfare and specifically focusing on family court.
And Ashley, do you want to pop the survey into the?
Yep, and then we have a quick survey. I just gotta pull that up real quick if you don't mind. It'll help us if you don't mind taking it. It'll help us with some.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
I always encourage people to complete the survey and
Mhm.
give us topics that you want to see us train. And or if something like pops up and you're like, oh, I wish that there was a training about this, email that FPA or the ones I put Ashley's and my email up above. Email us and say, hey, this is a training idea. We want to make sure that we're doing topics that are relevant to you, that help you to feel supported and help you to support families better.
Yeah. Let me just grab that survey. I'll pop it in the chat. We really appreciate you taking those.
Ashley, do you know if we send the slides out?
But it is recorded and it'll be on the website.
Is it on the website or YouTube?
YouTube, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, you're very
It
welcome.
was recorded and it will be on YouTube. And we will hang out here if you have any questions or comments for us. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for
Yeah, thank you.
participating, especially on a Friday. I hope you have a great weekend and make sure to practice self-care. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Ashley, I wanted to stay on for a minute.